Now, some in my audience will be saying, fine, John, that's all well and good, but carbon-14 proves that everything is really, really old.
Carbon-14 dating is a tool, much like John Pendleton. Depending on how it is used, it can be useful or give false results. Carbon-14 dating must be calibrated, but its accuracy once calibrated has been verified using both tree ring counts and by testing of items of known age, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Furthermore, carbon-14 dating is not even used to determine the age of the Earth. One of the limitations of this tool is that it cannot be used to date objects much older than 50,000 years. This entire discussion is a red herring. And yes, I did say John Pendleton was a tool.
Okay, let's talk about carbon-14. Now, if you don't know about carbon-14, just hang on for a minute. Let me answer this question for some other people, and then we'll get back to other stuff that maybe is more interesting for you. First of all, how is carbon-14 made? Carbon-14 is made in that a cosmic ray hits nitrogen-14 and changes into carbon-14. Carbon is normally carbon-12. Carbon-14 is unstable. We call it radioactive, in that it's unstable and gives off an emission that eventually reverts back to nitrogen-14. Now, all living things are made up of carbon, and some is carbon-14. Clams, algae, fish, birds, trees, animals, humans, all have lots of carbon, and some is carbon-14. While these things are living, there's a balance. But when there's death, there's a loss of carbon-14. The idea is if we could find out how much carbon-14 is left in something, we could know how long it's been dead. That's what the theory proposes.
The preceding was a passable explanation of the basic principles of radiometric dating. It would serve an introductory high school science class. But here's a few details you'd learn in the college course. First, carbon-14 dating is only used to date objects less than 50,000 years old. Second, the raw data must be calibrated to account for differences in carbon-14 concentrations. Third, a reservoir effect exists in ocean animals due to different sources of carbon consumption. And fourth, accelerator-based mass spec techniques allow much more precise dating than earlier decay rates, but the 50,000-year limit is still imposed.
Now, they suppose lots of things, one of which, for example, is how much carbon-14 was there 2,000 years ago? We don't know. We weren't there.
So we calibrate the data and extrapolate. Or we can stall out all scientific exploration and live in mud huts. Your call.
What we do know is things that we know their age, carbon-14 fails to give the right age.
If you misuse a tool or fail to understand its limitations, it will give incorrect results. Let's have John give some examples of how this happens.
For example, there was a seal that had been dead for 30 years. When its carcass was tested with carbon-14, gave an age of death of 4,600 years. A seal recently killed gave an age of 1,300 years.
This is because an animal's balance of carbon-14 is maintained by ingestion of carbon in their food. In the ocean, particularly in the Antarctic, a reservoir effect exists which throws off the normal balance. Plants in the ocean incorporate carbon dioxide into their structure from the surrounding water. If the plants live near upswells of water, as they do in the Antarctic, the water may have been flowing along the deep ocean floor for thousands of years. Animals eat the plants, and seals eat the animals that eat the plants. This reservoir of old carbon throws off the dating. The reservoir effect is highly technical, but it's well known to scientists who understand the tools they use.
The bark from a living tree gave an age of 10,000 years. It was alive. The shell from living snails gave an age of 27,000 years. Some of their membrane and tissue dated at 3,000 years. From the other extreme, we have coal from Russia that's supposedly 300 million years old, gave an age of 1,680 years.
Unsourced comments are difficult to disprove. This is why we source all of our comments. When your source is Hovind, and Hovind's source is God told me, you're no longer talking about science, lab coat notwithstanding.
Carbon-14 is not reliable for dating things that used to live.
Any tool is only as reliable as the person employing it. A hammer is not a reliable tool to drive in a nail if you don't know which end to use.
On the other extreme, we have a process for dating rocks. This is called potassium argon. In 1801, a volcano in Hawaii had an eruption, and the lava flowed and touched the water, stayed in there, solid there. They took those samples 167 years later to see how long it had been since the volcano erupted. We already know, 167 years. But with potassium argon, we got dates between 100 million years to 3 billion years ago that it erupted. And so, as I mentioned, for things that we do know, we find that that also is unreliable.
Frankly, that was an outright lie. Let me explain. Xenoliths are foreign inclusions in rock formations, one shown in the lava below. Scientists wishing to refine their dating techniques use potassium argon dating to date the xenoliths in a lava flow. As expected, the xenoliths dated to significantly older periods than the surrounding lava flows. This proved care must be taken not to include xenoliths in geological dating. Now, a creationist named Henry Morris, wishing to confuse the truth, exploited this finding and concocted the perversion John Pendleton just espoused. It is a simple lie.
Also in the Grand Canyon, we have lava that has flown over the edge of the canyon, over the rocks, as well as a layer down below that's called the cardanus, which is volcanic rock. Those two were tested. Obviously, the one that's flowed over the side of the canyon is the much younger lava flow. The one that's way down in one of the rock layers, the cardanus layer, is obviously much older. But in almost all of the testing that was done, the older one tested out millions of years younger than the younger one. And the younger one tested out millions of years older than the older one. And so, consistently, we've seen that it's not reliable. The Earth is young.
Wow, that was just barely coherent. Now, let me try to explain. First, misunderstand a basic fact about isochron dating. For the dating to be accurate, the samples must be cogenetic, meaning they must be from the same source. This fact is rather obvious to even the naive observer, and is well known to scientists employing the tool of radiometric dating. The dating experiment that Pendleton is referring to was done by a creationist who set out to disprove the age of the Grand Canyon. He chose 5 non-cogenetic samples, one from a pheocryst that wasn't even part of a lava flow. The samples contained elements of the lithospheric mantle under the Grand Canyon, which is substantially older than the other elements. This skewed the data. The only conclusion is that sloppy science yields false results.
Some say, well, you need a long period of time to make fossils. Well, there's lots of fossils out there. Here's one of my favorite ones. This is a cowboy boot. This was found in West Texas. And the right-hand image here, we see that the poor cowboy broke his leg, and his leg and foot stayed inside the boot. They did a scan of the toe section. All 5 toe bones are in there. It's all fossilized. This was found in the 1980s. The flip side shows the design that's on the boot. So they went looking in West Texas, the different cowboy boot factories, and found that the factory said, yeah, that's our boot. That's a design that we used in the 1950s. In 30 years, this whole thing was fossilized. Not millions of years, but a very short period of time.
Now, if you excavated your limestone boot nestled betwixt a horde of fossils radiometrically dated to the Cambrian era, you could conceivably falsify the geologic timescale theory. However, if your boot was sitting in ordinary hard water, known as hard because it contains calcium carbonate, also known as limestone, in some field somewhere, then what you have is a neat boot. That there, my friend, is a neat boot. That's all.